Welcome. Broadcasting from my studio in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is Jerry Hardesty for The Artist's Voice. I'm the host and the producer of the show, in which I empower artists to tell their stories and talk about their work. I'm streaming live on Facebook, and just to let you know, if you don't see the live version, a recording will be available shortly after the conclusion of the show. My guest today is Bo Bartlett, an artist and director. Bo is from Columbus, Georgia. Welcome, Bo, to the show.
Hey, Jerry, thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, you were raised in Columbus, Georgia, I believe. I understand. And since that time, you've acquired a great many accolades that have taken you around the world. Yet it seems you have not forgotten where you came from. You do not appear to be at all pretentious. So my first question is: has this small town upbringing been a jumping off point for much of your work?
Oh, it is. I think it is everything. Um, at noon on Saturdays here, we have the what we always call the air raid siren, and that is it's like an emergency broadcasting siren that goes out across the whole town.
Hmm.
When I was a little boy, they started it so that in case there was a nuclear bomb dropped, that we would all be prepared. So they tested it every Saturday just to sort of scare everybody and remind everybody that it was impending doom. We had to wear dog tags. It was the age of anxiety. They taught us to dive in a ditch if we thought the bomb was coming, or to hide under our desks, like that was going to help somehow.
Right, right.
Drop and roll sort of thing. Um, so it, there's no question that and so it's a constant reminder on Saturdays at noon when you hear this siren. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. I was raised in that time of the Cold War, and it's I lived in Philadelphia for 30 years and lived in Seattle for 10 years and spent my summers in Maine and a lot of time in New York. But basically Columbus is the the place that informs all of my um, the basics underlying subject of the paintings.
Of course, of course. Well, how large is Columbus? Is it less than 10,000?
It's 200,000 people. It includes Fort Benning, which is nearby, and it includes the whole county. They at some point they annexed the county, so they'd be the second largest city in Georgia. But the town is small. The town is this very tiny little enclave. It's a little old southern town. But then they annexed the county, so it'd be a larger city.
Of course, of course. Well, that's much larger than I anticipated it to be. So interesting. So, do you see life on both sides of the scale? In other words, the small town down and dirty, versus the more grandiose explorations of your very successful life as an artist and a director.
Oh, I'm very private. I love being in my studio all day, every day. So wherever my studio is, whether that's in Maine or when it was in Pennsylvania or on little Vashon Island, which was west of Seattle, I've always kept it very private. So I'm in my studio almost all day, every day. Um, you know, my wife Betsy Eby is a painter as well, and so
Oh,
she has here. We're in a big mill here. We're in a wonderful old mill building, a
uh-huh.
cotton mill, and so she has a studio down the hall, and spaces are so cheap here that I've got two other spaces nearby. One's an office and one's another painting studio. So three studios with 1,000 square feet each with north skylight, and because it's so affordable. Um,
I'm envious. I'm very envious.
I'm envious, and it's incredible.
Can I move to Columbus?
No, I try to tell people this is the place to be. I mean, the light's great, the people are all friendly, and it's a melting pot. You've got a real mix of people.
Sure.
It's a very racially diverse place, and it's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that in looking at you, viewing your website, I think that it's probably the most thorough website I've ever seen. So you seem to document life, and you've documented life from your birth through many of the accomplishments that I briefly mentioned. But you have a section on your website called that you call Message, in which you write about the seasons of your life. And though I didn't read all of it word for word because I didn't have that much time, because there's a lot of writing there. But in the summer of 2008, which is going back a few years, you shared several lists, a reading list, a listening list, a viewing list, all of which seemed to be quite challenging. I suspect that you completed those lists. However, I'm not going to ask you to share whether you did or not, unless you really want to. But there's a fourth list that you call Yes, We Can lists. And I found that interesting, in which you list 5 principles to live by. Number one, don't be afraid to live in hope. Number two, don't be afraid to be a do gooder. Three, don't be afraid to be earnest. Four, be the change. And five, have a glorious summer. Now, do you still live by those, or have you added to that or changed it in any way?
Oh, it's ever evolving, but yes, I still adhere to most all of those. Um, I think being earnest is sort of the is a dangerous one. It's a tricky, a kind of taboo kind of thing, being earnest, because we just live in a culture where we're naturally cynical.
Yeah.
It's really easy to slip into, and it's really a challenge and hard to be earnest without just being Pollyannic and hiding your head under you know in the ground, being ostriching or something. But I think that being earnest and being a shameless do-gooder are part of my everyday um, practices. I just think don't worry about what anybody thinks. Do what you can do to make the world a better place. Um, uh, don't posture or pretend, and just try to be as real as you can be. I mean, my overriding motto is just be real, and so when it comes to the work, um, separate from the life, is to just try to do work that's not gimmicky, or that doesn't have a hook that's not from your true pure soul.
Mhm.
Um, I think it was D.H. Lawrence said, anything that comes from the outside is not is not your true fate. You got to. Andrew White said you have to be homegrown to be any good, uh, and and I think that's true. That's one of my favorite quotes is Robertson Davies, and that's relates to being here and being in Georgia. It's that your root feed your crown,
Mhm.
and basically for me that means let your DNA and your ancestors and everything that you came from, your home, everywhere you came from, all of your experiences, be like the roots of a tree, and to go through you and nourish you, and then flower and be the thing that your foliage, the thing you show to the world, your work. So let where you came from be the thing that you express in the world, and that's a ongoing mantra. So you just keep checking in and making sure that you're being true to yourself and true to your sense of home and true to who you really are. And because, we're all very unique. Every one of us has different DNA and different experiences. So by just being ourselves, we're being naturally unique and genuine and an original thing. So, I think sometimes people are striving for something to make something different or original. I think they even try to get you to do that in art school. But in reality, you don't have to try. You already are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a very good point. Very good point. I love the analogy. Um, I found it very interesting that you titled this list the Yes, We Can list, and at the very top of your reading list was the Barack Obama book.
Mhm. Yes.
There's some correlation there. There
For
seems to be.
sure. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I'd like to focus on three areas, and that would be the Bo Bartlett Center, your work as a film director, and of course your art as it relates to your films and vice versa. So, with that in mind, can you tell us about the Bo Bartlett Center and the mission statement, if there is one? So, I'm sure there is. But.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I can't quote it verbatim. Um,
Yeah, sure. That's
oh
fine.
no, the center is a wonderful place. I didn't come up with it. It was a collector, my sister's husband, over the years, over many years, going way back to when I was young, just a young painter, used to buy paintings of mine. And it started actually, interestingly enough, at tax time. I would call him up. He was a successful developer. And I would say, "Oh, Otis, I have this uh, painting that no one has bought. And I have a tax bill of, like $10,000.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Would you be interested?" And it became a annual ritual where he started buying paintings at pennies on the dollar so that I could pay my taxes. There came a time where I finally got a handle of what that, how to, pay quarterly and how to do all that, and I got an accountant and everything. But uh, it still became a little bit of an annual ritual where he would, at the end of the year, say, what do you have?" And so he built this massive collection of paintings, which were paintings that hadn't sold throughout the year, and often they were because they were so large, nobody could possibly buy them. They were rolled up. He, I can't even tell you how many years it was before I even saw any of the paintings that he had purchased because they were so large. They were rolled up on these sonotubes, um, you know, 15 by 20 feet or something. And so that's how he built his collection. At some point, I don't know, in the 90s, maybe late 90s, perhaps mid 90s, he started to say, we need to do something with this collection. We need to house it somewhere. So that's when he started to uh, try to figure out. And he talked to the museum here in Columbus, the Columbus Museum, and asked them if they'd build a wing. And at the time, they're like, "We're in no position to build a wing right now for these paintings." But he was also on the board of the Columbus State University and friends with the president. And the president told him, he said, "Shoot, we'll build a building for those paintings." So that's how it started. And at the time, Otis, my brother-in-law, had a vision where it was a three-pronged thing. It was education, which was already there. Luckily, the art school already had the university had a College of the Arts, and then outreach, which was sort of working within the community, and then the exhibition space. So he had a design of a building that would have three separate wings. But we built Tom Kundig, the friend of my wife Betsy's, fantastic architect out of Seattle. He agreed to design the space. So he designed the space down on the river, Chattahoochee River, the River Park campus of the university. And it's an amazing 17,000 square foot space with skylights. And I helped in the sense that I wanted it to look like a modern version of the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia, where I went to school. And so, he used that skylight design all the way down, and so that's it houses a lot of those large paintings. We do rotating shows. Now we have a great rotating exhibitions space, and we have a lot of outreach within the town. We have there's a homeless program where we work with the homeless. We don't really teach them to paint. We give them the opportunity to paint, and that's been a very successful program. For example, this one homeless man, Max, a good friend of mine now, he was homeless and he would come to the program. We were in a church basement at the time. It was actually opened before the center was opened. And, um, and Max was off to the side, very quiet and not talking to anyone ever. And, but he would listen. And it turned out that once we started working, a lot of the people in there wanted to please us, and it was in a church basement, so they would do religious paintings. They would do paintings of a
Yeah.
cross or a church or something, or put religious sayings on the paintings. And then one week, I came to them and I said, "Listen, guys, like you can paint anything you want in here. You don't have to please us. This isn't about us. This is about you, about y'all. And you can paint anything you want. Choose something, an experience that really comes to your mind from your life, something that you remember seeing strongly, and paint that today." So they have acrylics and pencils and everything. And so Max came up to me, and it was one of the first times I'd ever spoken with him, even though I said hi a lot. Um, we do it every Thursday mornings. And he came up to me and he said, "I really want to, only thing that comes to my mind is this memory of my father being shot in the front yard when I was a little boy. Um, you know, the police came and he was shot. And um, so I said, "That's it. Paint that. That's the
Yeah.
thing." And he's like, "Really? Paint that?" And I said, "Yes." oh man, it was like opening the floodgates. From then on, it was like every experience in his life, he started painting, and they're like outsider artist paintings. They're wonderful paintings, and but now he's got a house, he's got a separate studio, he's got a job helping artists, and he paints all the time, and he sells his paintings, and he's got a very successful career. And it's just amazing how, our saying at the center is that I believe in the power of art to transform lives. And I genuinely believe that, if given the opportunity to really tap into your own feelings and express yourself
Sure.
without the parameters of being, within a market or being told what to do or what you should do, that it is a way to become alive and awake in a way that, we couldn't have dreamed of otherwise.
Well, I have to ask, what's Max's last name? I'd like to see his work.
I wonder if you can find that he's got a website. Um, I'll have to send that to you.
Okay,
I'd
thanks. I
like to,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Well, the Bo Bartlett Center has to be a wonderful tribute to you, and obviously a great way of giving back to the community, as you described there. So great work.
Thanks.
So
Yeah. Ultimately, we'd like to have the university's there and has their art school, and it is the interim director of the center is an instructor in the art school, so there is some nice synergy at
sure.
this point. But I'd still like to, in the future, have some sort of atelier academy type program within the university that would really relate to the paintings that are in the center, so that there's, that would draw students to the place.
Well, I'm going to have to put Columbus on my list of places to visit. So
Absolutely,
I'll be
everyone should.
knocking on your door someday.
It's a beautiful place. It really is.
I'm sure it is. So
With
is it
all
near?
with all of the complexity you can imagine in a
Now,
small.
is that near Atlanta?
100 miles south of Atlanta,
Really?
about 90 minutes.
Andersonville? I've been to Andersonville.
I haven't been there. I don't think.
You haven't been there? Oh, you got to read the book, Andersonville.
I haven't been there.
Book,
No.
and then you'll have to visit Andersonville. It's a site of one of the worst Civil War prisons that ever existed. So anyway, moving on.
Where is Andersonville?
In Georgia.
I mean, north, south, east, west.
No, I don't recall. I would guess it's south.
All right.
Because it was on a road trip to and from, or to Florida and back from Florida.
Okay, I bet it's pretty far east. It must be over there south of Savannah or something.
Could be.
I have no idea.
I'm just assuming that you know where everything is in the state of Georgia. You know how that goes.
Yeah, most places.
Yeah. Well, let's move on now. I want to move on to your film. And you do have a radio show called Art House. And for listeners, Art House is HARTHAUS, Art House Radio. The episode about the film is episode 101, or at least one of the episodes about them is episode 101 that I particularly listen to. So tell us how listeners can find the show and when it airs.
Yeah, thanks. It airs every Saturday and Sunday morning in Eastern time, which is actually it's a 3-hour block. It airs an archival show airs at 8 a.m. and then at 9 a.m. is the live show, and then there's Sounds of Art House, which I'm not the DJ on, which is from 10 to 11, and so that's 3 hours every weekend morning, and you can go to TuneIn. If you have the TuneIn app, it's on 88.5 WCUG FM, which is the Columbus State University radio station.
What's those I'm sorry, what's those call letters again?
WCUG.
CUG. Okay, got it.
And 88.5. And but we also have a website, and so you can hear, and as you probably did, all the archive shows are there. So right as the show is posted, it'll be there every week. And that's arthouseradio.com with ARTHAUS. So yeah, we have a great time doing it. I really do. I grew up with radio, here in Columbus. There was a local radio station which played Cousin Al, who was a sort of a hick, redneck hick, DJ, and he talked, but he played Patsy Cline and Hank Williams and Chet Atkins and all that, and and you know, then Wolfman Jack broadcast out of Texas, and you could hear that all around the country. So you know, I just remember as a kid lying in bed with my little tiny transistor radio. It was like that big, about the size of a cell phone actually,
Yes.
and I'd have it under my pillow at night, and I would, you know, just slowly change the dial, and you could hear, um, you know, Cuban radio. You know, you could hear
Oh,
radio out of Chicago playing jazz and New Orleans, because there were not a lot of radio stations interfering with these big signals, and like Wolfman Jack broadcasting off the border down in Texas. So you know, you could hear these things, and so as a kid, it broadened my worldview. It was like I'm
mhm.
there in my little bed, you know, I'm like 8 years old with my little transistor radio, listening to the outside world, thinking there's a big world out there. You know, it's not just little tiny Columbus, Georgia here, and people
Well, I
playing.
think you found it. I think you found that big world out there. And speaking of stations, I don't know about you, but I miss a good jazz station.
For
So
sure,
that's my favorite genre. But
completely.
anyway, but back to this episode 101 on Art House Radio. You actually introduced the backup music for the film. Uh, so talk about that. Did you actually select make those selections for the film?
Oh yeah, I mean the film is a long story, and we can
Yeah.
get into that. But um, my wife Betsy Eby is a musician. She's a pianist.
Ah,
So she was actually the official music director,
uh-huh.
uh, and she had actually proposed some of the soundtrack. Lola Marsh, which was a band that I wasn't really paying attention to. Lola Marsh is a band out of Israel, and a pop band, and but they had things like this sort of, you know, go by me sometimes, but they had requested one of my paintings for their cover of their album. Actually, they had digitally enhanced it where they put themselves in the painting. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, yeah, it was a painting called The Promised Land, and I think it was Promised Land. And then Yale put herself in the prow of the boat, and the other guitarist is rowing the boat. So at the last minute, apparently right before they went to press, they sent us an image of it and said, "Is it okay if we use this?" And you know, I guess officially maybe they didn't have to, but they didn't. They were trying to avoid any legal things,
Sure,
and
sure.
I sort of like, you know, well, it's not the painting exactly, but you know, thanks for asking. And they said we have to know by tomorrow, so we were like trying to listen to it a little bit, like, can we hear some cuts? Like, we don't want to like be saying you can use that if, and then they instead they had a video of the whole production of the thing where they had spent like 3 months, you know, photographing the characters and the boat, and you know, in a studio, and like recreating the painting. And that was impressive enough for me to say, oh yeah, sure, just use it at this point. And then it turned out, I mean, the music's wonderful. And
It
Yael
is?
Shoshona, who does the primary singing, has a wonderful voice, you know.
Yes.
So and so anyway, we sort of as a trade-off, we said, you know, look, could we use some of your music in our movie? Betsy had been listening to the CD that they had sent, and so she said, you know, some of this would work. We mostly have more ambient kind of things, and classical piano, which Betsy plays.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, Her own original compositions, which are gorgeous. She's always, we call them nadas, where she's always just improvising on the piano, but she, you know, she's a classical pianist. So there are a couple of pieces that are inspired by classical. And then we also had music from several other sources. Jane Antonio Cornish, who's a fantastic composer in New York City. She was kind enough to let us use one of her pieces of music, sort of peppered throughout, but at the very final end credits. And then Dustin O'Halloran, who, I don't know if you know him, he's also a wonderful sort of contemporary classical musician. Um, my son Elliot, the film is actually dedicated to Elliot, who had passed away in 2014.
Yes.
And Elliot and I really connected through music. All of my sons, my older sons as well. We always, you know, we were different ages and different generations, so we would have very different opinions about things,
Mhm.
but we could always find common ground with music. And so when Elliot passed away, um, I was right actually, you know,
Of
talking about
course.
two different strains here at the same time. But when Elliot passed away, I remember driving across the country after having been to his memorial in California, in San Francisco, and I almost felt like he was sitting in the seat beside me, and it just came to me clear as day. It was like, you know, do a radio show, get a radio show, And I thought at the time I had to like buy a station or something. You know, I started looking into how much it cost to buy a station. I was like, "That's not going to work." So it took a few years to realize that, you know, that they needed some programming, local programming at the college radio station here. So I just went down and asked, and they said, "Oh, we'd love it. Yeah, that'd be great." You know, and so it's expanded, and now we even have a nighttime show, Art House After Dark, um, on the weekends. So. Where was I with the music? I sort of got off my other stream. Oh, so music is the thing that connected Elliot and I. And so when I was asking what music we could use, I realized I really wanted a piece of music that Elliot liked, since the film was dedicated to him. And so he had turned me on to Dustin O'Halloran at some point. He said, "Dad, I listen to this a lot." And he said, "You might like this." And so it was one of the pieces of one of the composers that I really wanted to have work on the film. And Dustin, you know, he's a big time music guy, and you know, we contacted him, and he was like, you know, everybody owns the music, you know, Sony or whoever, you know, people own this music. I can't just like say, "Here, use this." It's a big complex thing. And so he was nice enough to actually give us a piece of music. He said, "Here's something that, you know, I haven't done anything with yet." And that's at the dam scene, which is the climactic scene of the film, that we use that piece of music. It's a
Oh,
beautiful,
yes,
beautiful.
yes, very powerful.
And it's the dam scene starts with what I had done just in the rough cut, which is I just edited the rough cut myself, and I'd stuck my son's Man Bartlett, who lives in New York, who's a musician. I'd stuck a drone piece of his at the beginning of the dam, which is just constant like drone
Mhm.
sound, which
Yes.
built tension. And but we didn't really have a way to have that release from that tension until we got Dustin's music to really release that feeling of at the dam.
Mhm, mhm. Well,
So
that's interesting that you say you and Elliot shared a love of music. My son and my youngest son and I have the same situation. You know, different generations, obviously, but we both have a love of music and share that love.
yeah,
Very
isn't that great? The way you can learn new music from them, and you can share old music with them that influenced the new
uh-huh.
music that they're sharing
Yeah,
with you. So
yeah,
it is a
it's
great way to find
great. Well,
common
before
ground.
we go into further about the film, I would like to share the trailer
Oh, great.
at the time. So I'll have to do some manipulating here to bring it up on the screen and get myself out of it. So I'm going to stop the camera. I'm probably going to take you out as well for the time being. And we'll get to it here in a minute.
Everybody is always he's got a new address. How much did you tell him? I couldn't think of anything. She never even mentioned what.
There's a good chance I'm alone for this old man.
Don't let anything happen to him.
You know, it's an awful choice, but you were so young. You have your whole life in front of you.
And we're back.
Thanks for sharing that, Jerry.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love the film.
Thank
And
you. Thank
uh,
you. Thanks for watching.
oh, hey, I enjoyed it. It was great. So I know this is not your first time in directing a film. This is probably your, I don't know, what, fifth, sixth, something like that?
Made a lot of short, small films, yes, but
Yeah.
probably fifth or sixth, and mostly documentaries, mostly until now, or some hybrid of documentary.
Why this particular film?
Well, actually,
Did-
this is
did
this
the
was the
writer choose
first.
you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to just ask, did the writer choose you, or you choose the script, or so? How did that come about?
It's a great story. I was in film school. No, I'm sorry. I was in art school at Pennsylvania Academy, and it must have been like early 1980s. I was in art school, and I started dreaming. I keep a dream journal, so I always pay attention to my dreams and what they're telling me. And I had a dream where my paintings were moving. I was working on a painting,
Mhm.
and the painting started moving. I think if I remember correctly, there was a window or a hallway or a doorway, and a car went by outside. And maybe a person passed, and I was like, "Oh man, wouldn't that be cool if you could make moving pictures, like motion pictures, like?" And then it dawned on me, there was such a thing, like movies, and
40
so.
years ago. 40 years ago.
Oh my gosh! I mean, what 1980, whatever that would have been, 81. Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
that 40, and then so I went to. It took me a few years. I got more and more interested. I got a video camera, and so I was just starting my painting career. I was just out of school and just started. I had right off the bat, I had a relatively successful painting career. I started selling paintings and showing in Philadelphia, and but on the side, you know I kept. Going and getting the video camera from from Comcast, which was local back then. It was the public access station, and they would give you video cameras and give you editing suites so that you could make local content. That was part of their deal with Lower Merion Township, just outside of Philadelphia. That it was the cable station, but they would give local people access to their equipment. And I was like the only person doing it, like it was sort of a suburb, and like people weren't, sometimes they'd get equipment and go record their child's school play or something. But otherwise, this one, video cameras were giant and everything.
Sure.
But I
Yes.
learned, but then I thought, I need to actually learn how to make film. So I had a friend that had gone to NYU's summer intensive workshop where you get a certificate. It's a 2-year program in a summer. So for 14, 15 hours, 16 hours a day, you're in class, for the 3 months or however. And you learn basically, we were cutting on 16 millimeter film. We were shooting and cutting on film with razor blade and tape, and the old fashioned way. And, I think that at the time, Spike Lee had just finished She's Gotta Have It. And, so that Tish was very excited and thrilled, and we had great instructors. And so I was in my screenwriting class, and and the teacher said, every great film starts with a screenplay. And so I had this idea for a film. It was one of the reasons I actually gone to film school to try to learn so I could do this film. And the film was about men and women, the North and the South, the union of opposites. And it was sort of an inner civil war. And that's probably because I was from the South and I, was in the North. And just about the self and the struggle within the self. So I had this idea, and I asked the screenwriting teacher. I said, "Well, would you help me write it?" And she said, "Well, let's have lunch." And so she invited me up to her Upper West Side apartment, and we had lunch. And I told her my spiel, and she said, "This is interesting, but you need a Southern writer. You need a Southern writer." And I wanted to have a female writer. I wanted it to be about the male and the female, and like I would provide the visuals, and then a woman would provide the words. And I thought that would be a really nice balance of a film, of a concept of a film. And so she said, "I just saw a play on Broadway that was excellent. It was by a Southern playwright named Sandra Deer, and it was called So Long on Lonely Street." And she said it was a great play, everything that the old classic plays have. And so she said, but the night that it opened, all the Broadway critics just bashed it. They just ripped it apart. I mean, and it had to close within a week or 2 weeks. It had to close. And she said, so you might think about going down to Atlanta and finding Sandra Deer and seeing, she's probably licking her wounds, and you might want to see if she would want to work on a film idea, And it's worth a shot. And so, thank goodness that's exactly what I did. And by the time I got there, Time Magazine had come out and said that her play was the best new play of the decade. But it was too late. They had already closed it down.
Yeah.
And so I got to Sandra's, and she had the article in her refrigerator, freshly clipped out of Time magazine, um, with a magnet. But we worked together for about 5 years on that screenplay, and that was from '86 to the early '90s. And I'd had a lot of friends that were going to support the film at that time, but then it was a change of, the economy was changing. There were a lot of shifts, and so all those people that were going to be my backers didn't. So I optioned it in Hollywood for 2 years, or actually 2 cycles, trying to get it made in Hollywood. And they had a lot of big people signed to it. Jocelyn Morehouse was assigned to it for a while, and, actors. But because of the way agents drop out of things, I mean, agents shift and actors drop out and writers drop out, it shifted. And so I was in between with that film, that script, and I'd had a show in New York at PPOW. It's the early '90s, and it had gotten a negative review, and so bad that I was like thinking about giving up painting altogether. I mean, I was still busy painting all the time when I'd had this other stuff going. I was always thinking about the film, and then Betsy Wyeth, Andrew Wyeth's wife, called me on the phone. She said she'd seen the bad review in the New York Times from Roberta Smith, and she'd seen it, and she said, come out, I want to see your work. It piqued my interest. And so, I knew about Andrew Wyeth. I'd grown up loving Andrew Wyeth, and but after art school and after many years in New York, I was like, yeah, Andrew Wyeth, he's country bumpkin painter down there, regionalist, And so I went, and I was like, here's my work, and they were big paintings and stuff. I didn't show her the actual paintings at the time. I showed her my catalog, and we talked, and she was, Betsy Wyeth is an amazing woman. She was like reading it while we were talking, and she said, oh, I see you make films. And, I made a few shorts, and nothing had gotten finished actually. And I said, oh yeah, I make films. And since I was thinking about shifting at that moment, she said, well, I want to make a film on Andrew. I said, well, I'll do it. I'll make it. So I never made a film before. And so, it's Andrew Wyeth, and, but she paid me money for 5 years to be there every day. And it was the best education of my life because I was there with Andrew Wyeth every day. And, it took maybe almost a year of deprogramming before I realized, oh my God, this guy's a master. He's a genius. Forget about all those things they told me in art school. He's incredible. The guy's an amazing painter, and this work is vital and important, and it changed my life. And because he focused on his own life. He focused. He stayed right there in Chad's Ford in that little square, and a few miles from his childhood home, and that's what he painted. He painted his own backyard, but he made it universal and brought it to the world, and you saw that in the work.
Well, is there some place where you can actually still view this video?
Snow Hill? Yes, you can. I think actually we have a production company. It's Running Stag Productions, Running Stag like a deer, Productions, .com. And I think it's there. Yeah, it's there. Snow Hill is there. You might have to buy it, and it might be somewhere on Vimeo or something. But yeah, you can link to it there. And Snow Hill, I mean, it's a early film, but they played it a lot on PBS and local PBS affiliates for fundraising and things at the time. And Stacy Keach did the narration, and I think it's a lovely small film. Early, the bones are there anyway. We worked with a lot of the things that Richard Merriman had, interviews that he had done, and previous footage. N.C. Wyeth was amazing at shooting footage with this little 8mm camera that he had, little sepia colored footage. Smithsonian had recently rejuvenated a lot of that footage, and so I was able to look at those 8mm. And N.C. Wyeth was he was a great storyteller. Andrew's father, so he did all the Scribner's books and Robinson Crusoe and all of those, and Treasure Island. And so he shot like a film director. I mean, he shot his little camera. He would edit in camera basically. You could tell he would shoot one scene and then he would shoot the next scene as if it were edited together. He knew exactly what he was doing.
So back to your own film.
Yes.
So let's go back to how does this?
So yeah, that I made Snow Hill, and by the time I was finished with Snow Hill, which was 96 or something like that, 95, 96, that it came out, and I was so charged by Andrew Wyeth, and I just, all I wanted to do was paint again. I didn't even want to be making films anymore. I was like, that was great, I did that, you know. But
Yeah.
now I've been charged by sort of my childhood idol, Andrew Wyeth, and so we were best friends too. And he encouraged me. You know, he really loved my paintings, and he encouraged me to paint. So I was like, you know, New York critics, I don't mind if they don't like the work. You know, Andrew Wyeth likes the work, and so he inspires me. And he was constantly like egging me on and giving me, you know, suggestions and ideas and stuff. And so I just went back to painting. So I painted, you know, and there were in time from time to time, you know, Betsy and I, my wife, would make a short film or something, and just for fun, you know, and but then we moved back to Georgia from the West, from Seattle, and it just turned out my father had passed away in 2012, and Elliot, my son, had passed away in 2014. So there was a lot of loss and grief, and then 2016, you know, we had a shift in the political scene, and I was like, you know, needing to, besides doing the Bo Bartlett Center and the local outreach with both the local incarcerated and the homeless, I needed something a reality to step into to help me just process all of my feelings in my life, which is, you know, what art always does. But,
Yes.
and I needed something I could really pour my life into that would also bring beginner's mind, which is what we're striving for. We're always striving to sort of be alive in the moment in a new way, like you don't know what you're doing. You know, I've painted for so long, I basically know what I'm doing. Um, so I wanted to do a film, and I told Betsy, and she said, "Do things don't stay fixed?" Because ever since we've been together, you've talked about that screenplay as if it's something alive that other people know about. You know, I quote from it and stuff. You know, things don't stay fixed. You got to keep coming back to them. You know, all these sort of like Southernisms that are in the film. And she said, make that film. And so the film industry had come to Georgia at that point. It just by coincidence, we were here. The film industry had come. They're Marvel, making all the Marvel movies up south of Atlanta at Pinewood. And there's a Georgia Film Academy, which actually provides funds for artists to make films, filmmakers to make films. And so here we had at Columbus State University, there were a program with interns to make movies, and they needed a project for the interns to do. And they had several big Hollywood firms come through here, and they had dropped out for one reason or the other. Locations didn't work, or the actors dropped out of the film. And suddenly they had a bunch of students sitting there in class waiting to work on a film and no film to work on. So I happened to be in the right place at the right time and said, well, I'll take those students. I'll take those 50 free interns. And Georgia Film Academy said, well, okay, if you'll do that, we'll give you money, give you money for the film. So we pretty much self-funded it, but they did help us like pay a lot of the other expenses on the film at that point. But it's a micro, very low budget film that we, it ballooned to a lot more by the time we were in post-production, of course. It was, the whole budget was like $500,000, but I really wanted to tell the story of this person that comes back to the South, which was I didn't realize it until I just watched it the other day on Amazon. Bessie and I sat down the night that it first came on, and we sat down and watched it. And I was like, that in so many ways, that is my life story. I know this story so well at this point. I finally understand it and what it's about. And it's about loss and grief and letting go of the past.
Mhm.
The setup is that a worldly photojournalist returns to the Deep South to stop his daughter's wedding, to find that he's the one that's been stuck in the past all along. And I think that's the setup. The trailer makes it look a little more like an M. Night Shyamalan than it probably really is. They added a little intrigue in there. I love M. Night. M. Night's a great collector, and he's been been very nice to us for helping us. He's had us in his studio in Pennsylvania and watching the films they're doing. But I love the way he was also very influenced by Wyeth. M. Night was very influenced by Wyeth, and it's amazing that circle. Another influence was obviously David Lynch, and I think you can sort of see there's certain Lynchian qualities to the film. And I've always loved Lynch, especially like Blue Velvet and that series. But he was a Pennsylvania Academy grad, so when I was at Pennsylvania Academy, I knew of him and sort of looked up to his successes. At that time, they were just early. It was like Racerhead and a few of those, maybe Elephant Man. But I went down to Dino De Laurentiis he had a place over in Wilmington, Wilmington, North Carolina, when I was first getting started trying to make the film. This is way back in the late '80s, and Dino was so nice to me. All I did was send him a catalog, and Dino said, he got the catalog and he wrote me back. Back then we didn't have email. He wrote me back and said, "Come down here and let's see what we can do." And so I got down there. I was so young, and they were just finished up with Blue Velvet, and Dennis Hopper had been there, and Dennis Hopper had seen the work from the catalog, and he started buying paintings. And so it was, and Dennis actually was going to be light man in the film for the longest time until, it took so long to make it that Dennis had passed away. But I did reach out to David Lynch when we started production finally. In 2017, I reached out and I said, can you give me any tips, any pointers? And he was so nice to reach back and say two things, and they are very handy things to know. And he said, first off, he said, only work with people you like. That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah,
just keep that in mind and always do that, no matter what the endeavor, whether it's a gallerist or anything. Only work with people you like. And so I hired everybody on the cast and crew. We're all people that I was like, I can work with you because I like you, And then secondly, he said, keep your eye on the donut. Keep your eye on the donut, not on the hole. Okay.
So what do you mean by that? Okay, what do you mean by that?
Exactly, right? It was like record scratch, like, what do you mean? And so it took me a while to figure it out. And so we wrote it down. We put it in a big mantra in our production office here, and we had it on the wall. And I did a painting of a donut, to keep reminding me. And it was that if you need something in the film, don't focus on that thing. Like you're going to blow the whole thing. You got to keep focused. You got a big movie to make. You got a whole donut to worry about. You don't have to worry about the little thing in the middle that's missing. I assume that's what he meant. This is my interpretation. So, and that helped so much because, we'd be like going toward production and not have a cinematographer yet, and if we had ground to a halt and I started thinking, we can't make the movie, we don't have a cinematographer. Everything would have been thrown out of balance. I just kept thinking, we got a movie to make. We got to find that cinematographer, but we have a whole movie to make. And so it really helped. And, right up near the end, we didn't have a lead actor. We didn't have a lead actor that we liked. A couple of people had dropped out. We had several major actors that were in it that had dropped out. And so, it just had to do with lawyers and how all that stuff works and timing. And so at the last minute, we got our lead actor, William Gregory Lee, who I think worked out great. And if I'd said let's don't go into production because we don't have a lead actor, it would have thrown us all off because we had a movie.
I based my the fact that I thought he was a great actor on the fact that in the beginning of the film I kind of felt sorry for him, and then in the middle of the film I didn't like him at all, and by the end it was a hero. So
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, that character development is, I love film. I've always loved film. I love stuff that, I like Tarkovsky and stuff, very slow cinema kind of stuff. So, we tried to make a film that was accessible and a film that was timeless, more or less. There's not things to date it per se, although in time everything's dated, obviously. But, there aren't a lot of cars or styles and stuff. No cell phones, nothing that's going to sort of date it in that way. So I try, the way I do with my paintings, I try to make them seem like a timeless thing. But yeah, we're relatively pleased with the outcome. It changed. There was times when there was a lot more humor in it, and it sort of now it's real subtle, very subtle humor. But it's changed a lot. But it got back to the core, and by the end, it got back to the core of what I really wanted to do in the first place, which is the goal.
Well, who would believe that it would take so long to make a film?
35 years. Hey, strike one up for perseverance, man. Let's hear it for perseverance.
Hey, yeah, pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, just I believe in it. Just keep on going. Don't ever quit. Don't give up on anything, any dream. And
Yeah.
I'd love to, make some more in the future. And it's just anything that you want to do. You just gotta keep on striving. Short-term goals, long-term goals. Just keep on working toward those long-term goals.
But back to the donut. If you don't have all the ingredients to make the donut, you can't make the donut.
You got to keep moving forward, making that donut. Find a substitute. Find some sorghum flour or something that was different than what you were expecting.
Well, now back to the script.
Yes.
Did you actually write the script, or did you kind of oversee the writing of the script?
Sandra Deere and I mean, she gets the official screenwriting credit. She wrote every word on an old fashioned typewriter originally, like a Royal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how long ago it was. And then at some point we had to get it transcribed. But yeah, I originally had recorded the story on a little tape recorder, and then when I'd gone to her, I had a slightly different version of the story, but that shifted a lot. And so what I would do is each time we would talk, and we talked on the phone once a week for 5 years, and then I would go down to Georgia in the summers and work with her in Georgia. But we set it in Columbus, my hometown, on purpose. I wanted it to be here, so I would intimately know the direction of the light, the direction of the shots. I storyboarded everything, and she wrote all the words. And she told me one time, she said, "Bo, I would make a suggestion, like something someone should say. She'd say, never write dialogue. You don't write the dialogue. I write the dialogue." But what I would do,
Like collaboration.
what I would do is provide the images. I'd say, I had a dream last night. I saw this, I saw something, a car hanging from a crane, and I'd say, "Can we work that in?" And she'd say, "Let me work on that." Like a week later or 3 days later, she'd write it back and she'd read the script to me and what she had written. And I think we had a fax back then. We'd fax back and forth. But I would give her the image and she would work it in. So, and so many of the things were stories from my life. Like my cousin had hit a cow in the road. Actually, like he was driving to Atlanta early in the morning, and actually, a cow had gotten out of the fence and he'd hit it and had gone up and actually sheared the roof off of the car, not the car that was coming in the other direction. But I told Sandra, I said, like this cow in the road, I'd like to incorporate that into the film. And she just like wrote it in. She's a genius. So we had a great working relationship.
Yeah, obviously. Were any of the lesser actors local?
Oh, almost everyone was local. William Gregory Lee was out of Virginia, I think. But everyone is Southern. I don't like films where the actors are feigning Southern accents. I don't care for that.
Right.
Everything needs to be genuine. So so many of the actors are right here in Columbus. Even Melissa St. Armand, who is an Atlanta actress. She's from Columbus originally. That's Nina. Tara Oakes is an Atlanta actress. That was Kate. And so we all the other actresses, Yolanda Sewell, who plays Miriam on The Dam, and Lorenzo Battle, who plays Nathan. Those are all local actresses. You just, you can't get anybody to do what they did. I mean, they just they embrace the parts with the whole.
Well, when you were introducing the film on your episode 101 on your Art House radio program, I think you stated that you felt that Sam was softening when he and Chris were riding around in the middle of the night.
Yes, that's
Don't you think that Sam was actually starting to soften when he met William White in the cemetery?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, William White is a version of his own inner child, I think, and there's a moment there at the beginning during that scene where you're not even sure William wasn't just an apparition. Like, is he a real person?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of magic realism in the film like that, where people are coming and going. Miriam is an example where it's like, is that even real? And I think there is that quality. It's a Southern Gothic film, but it also has that kind of magic realism to it.
So you, as the director, how much liberty did you actually have?
Oh my gosh! I mean, it was terrifying. You make a film. I'm a slow simmerer. I'm a very slow simmerer. I make a painting, and I put a little mark of red over here, and I sit back and look at it for 2 hours and think, is that going to work?
I understand.
Do I like that? But with a film, I mean, the first day in the first production meeting, I made us have like kumbaya meetings where every day we'd organize and get in a big circle and become one. And I made sure that everybody was okay and happy and relaxed. And so we had a good working environment. But I remember that very first one where I circled everybody up and it was time to like go start shooting. And like everybody looked at me. They were like, "What do we do now?" I'm like, "I don't know." I'm just like a baby. I sit in my studio all the time and I'm quiet. I mean, so, but I suddenly had to like get on that horse and like say, you do this and you do that. And I love the process because it was such a collaborative process where I'd never directed actors before. And I originally had a friend, Terry Kinney, that was going to play Sam way back in the day. He was a Steppenwolf guy. And Terry was going to help me direct it. But luckily, William Gregory Lee, he had done enough TV and, small films where he was like, I can help people know what to do. So everybody did their part. And the great thing is it was a communal effort, not just with the cast and crew, but with the whole town. Everybody, food showed up, and catering people was donated, and
Awesome.
everybody. It was a whole the whole town made the film,
Huh.
and I
Now,
hope it pays homage to the whole town. I hope it does in a positive way. Just the beauty of the small place.
did you actually cast the actors yourself?
Yes. Stacy Cunningham, our producer, who's local. She had lived in California for a long time. She had moved back, and Stacy helped. She did the casting right here at the local theater, the little Springer Theater, and we got people to come in, and we just cast. And I was there, and Betsy was there, and we had a couple of other folks, and we hashed it out, and we had a lot of great talent. It was really hard to do, and a couple of choices were like, oh, I don't know, and there was racial aspects, like who do we cast in this major part, because it wasn't written, for the race so we had a lot of interesting choices to make, and in the end I wound up, I think everyone was a natural in the parts that they played, and I actually shot the whole film as written in the screenplay. Sandra Deal, we shot every single line of her screenplay. We had an editing process before. We had to take out a few things to make it be the right length, but then we shot everything, and then it was a lot more than we needed, and a lot of storylines came out in the final edit. We edited in Atlanta, but with Matt Garner out of New York came down and helped me edit. I had a 2-hour version that he helped make sense out of. Mine was unwatchable.
You created a number of paintings based on the movie itself.
Yes,
and
that's right.
I looked through those paintings, and some of those paintings were not scenes in the cut version, the edited version.
That's right. Well, every scene from the film came from a storyboard, and many of those came from ideas of paintings that I'd had before. So I was like, let's turn those into a film. And then as I was working and I'd done all the storyboards, I'd look at the storyboards. For painting, for me, is like a mise en scene. It's like the idea in film where you actually sum up the whole idea of the film in one scene, one shot. And so I try to do that with painting. I learned that concept at film school at NYU. And so I try to do that in painting, where I sort of summarize a whole idea in one scene. And that's what I try to do. And so when it came to making the film, it was a series of those, that give you the whole idea and the whole feeling.
Well, I think one of the strongest scenes in the movie, and one of the strongest scenes as a painting is this one, if I can bring it up.
Oh yes, absolutely. Draw out the child.
Yes, yes,
And that's the climactic scene from the dam scene in the film.
yes.
And
Right.
he's holding William White, the local boy, and Sam has pulled him out of the river. And so yes, and that's where it does come full circle, because it's about loss and grief, and my own loss, and it's everything is a self-portrait, but it is a version of a self-portrait dealing with grief and loss. And so it's about sacrifice and things changing, and things don't stay fixed. Everything changes, and it's like things fall. It's like a sort of countrified version of things fall apart. William Butler, things fall apart.
Well, one of the characters that I found most colorful is this one. I never did catch her name.
Oh, in the film. Okay, that's Miriam. Yes, and it's only really mentioned a few times when Sam's in the car with her, and at the dinner table when they're having that long conversation, which is sort of arduous and will drive many people away from the film, because it's sort of hard to watch because Sam gets progressively angry.
Yes, yes,
that's Miriam, and that painting is called "Everybody is Always Everywhere." And that's actually a line that was not written by Sandra, but I didn't write it either. Elliot had told me that line after he passed away. I was asleep one night and I had woken up, and I woke up and started thinking about Elliot passing away. This was a year or so after he had passed, maybe 2015 or early 16. And I heard his voice. It was clear. I was awake, but I heard his voice clear as day. It was as if his head was on the pillow beside me. And he said, and I was crying, sobbing in grief. And he said, "Don't you get it, Dad? I'm right here. Everybody is always everywhere."
Oh, that is powerful. That
And
is powerful.
I just thought, I don't know what that means, but I trust you, and you would not have told me that if that weren't true, and it helped.
Mhm.
I don't know, I have no idea how to like put that concept into this reality. But I was telling Miriam when we were going on the screenplay, working on the script. I was
Mhm.
telling Miriam about that because I said, the story is about how, um, you know, Sam's wife is still present. Nancy is still in the film, even though you never see her. She's circling the table at the dinner table, and she's coming to the wedding across the cemetery. That's Nancy Cam. That's the white, invisible wife. And I was saying, the bag that you're carrying around with you is the photos of everybody that has passed away, and you're carrying all the souls with you. And I said, my son Elliot told me that after he passed, that everybody is always everywhere. So when we shot that scene of her and getting out of the car with Sam,
Yeah.
that line wasn't in the screenplay. It was not written. She had her script, which was a lot more about her and Sam bickering. Like, she's saying, "Don't touch my hair,"
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, "You want my hair," which is up in that giant Nefertiti
Yeah.
bun. And he, finally she steps out of the car. And I don't think she was supposed to say anything at that point. He was supposed to just drive away and look at her. But as he's starting to drive away, she says that line that Elliot said to Sam. She says, "Everybody is always everywhere."
Well,
And so she ad
most,
libbed that, and we kept it.
most of what she was saying, especially on the dam, I couldn't understand what she was saying.
Oh my gosh, that monologue was 3 pages in the screenplay.
Really?
Oh my gosh, it's just the most beautiful monologue. If you want to ever like do a theatrical monologue, you get a hold of that monologue. It's so beautiful about baby Moses and the reeds and draw out the child, drawing the child up out of the water. And Miriam didn't. The Sisters of Saturn were coming. It's the most powerful. I mean, Sandra Deer, I watched her write that the day that she wrote that. I was beside her at the typewriter when she clicked into a trance and wrote Miriam's whole monologue nonstop. And she was just rocking back and forth writing this monologue. It was from
Mm.
above or from the heavens or something.
I'll have to go back and watch that scene again to see how much of it I can
It's
pick up.
so much of it is by the final edit was muffled, and we just with the crowd scene and the drone, we built the tension without the long actually hearing as much of the monologue as was there.
Hmm. Hmm.
No, but I mean,
Here's
it's
one
such a
more.
relief. It's like a dammed up you know creative act to finally have the release of the film and have it out there on platforms. And so it's a lifelong release. So you can probably hear it in my voice. It's like, whew.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, here's one more painting that I want to share.
Oh, Light Man. Thank you. So that's Light Man. That's the Light Man scene.
Right.
I actually just had that idea. I said to Sandra, I said, when I was a kid and they would put the spotlight out, I guess it was
Yeah.
probably out on Victory Drive where they wanted you could come out and buy new cars, or out by the airport if they were looking for a plane in the sky or a blimp or something. They would put these spotlights up. And I always just wondered as a kid, like I didn't have a car, so I couldn't go drive to them to find out what they were, but I wanted to go drive to them. It was a way of getting people to come to things. So I said, I want to have this scene in the middle of nowhere where there's just this Klieg light for no reason that I didn't know what the reason was. I just wanted to do it. And so I told Sandra that idea, and it took her a little while to work that in, but she worked that in to the story. And so, I mean, when Sam is telling the story of what happened to his wife, how she passed away, and then they see that light, in the field. It is that moment of illumination, of enlightenment, where he starts to come to terms with, it's the dark night of the soul, and he starts to come to terms with the loss and the grief that he's suppressed and experienced and suppressed. But
Yeah.
that Butch Anthony is Lightman. That was the character that was going to be Dennis Hopper long and long ago. Butch Anthony is an artist down in Alabama, amazing artist. Museum of Wonder is his website, or his Instagram. And there's a museum down there of his wonderful things. And Butch Anthony is amazing. And so what we had a lot of actors we tried to cast for that. But when we asked Butch to come in and see if he would audition for Lightman. And he had never acted before. But he was perfect for Lightman.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he didn't have to feign a thing. That's his real accent. That's shining this light. You know, that's him.
Yeah. I love the
Don't
painting.
signify nothing.
I love the painting. Those are my three favorite of all that you.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited because we're going to exhibit the paintings. Most of those paintings, the Things Don't Stay Fixed paintings that are related to the film, and other works as well that are related in some way to that film or other films. So they'll be at Miles McHenry in May for the show in New York. That's we're working on the last one now, which is actually a painting for the next film I'm going to do.
The next film?
Yeah,
you're gonna have to keep us updated. I'll
for sure. Yes.
Just keep us updated.
But I think the main thing to remember, though, I mean, like we do so many things, you know, with the center and the radio show and the outreach and local and painting, but you know, it's to just, we can do so many things, you know. If we try not to let ourselves get distracted by things or get in our own head, and you know, we can do anything we want, and the way to do it is to just believe in it and be relentless. And you have to keep beginner's mind. So once you got to where you can do something, you know, you can do that forever and beat a dead horse, or you can change. And I've in my own life, I thought, well, should I change and, like, you know, start doing more abstract paintings or do more conceptual paintings? Because, you know, those elements are already in the paintings I'm doing. They're abstract elements, and they can start abstractly, and there are a lot of conceptual things in there. But do I want to do a different art form, or do I want to, like, just take on something else that's a parallel thing, you know, music or writing or film or radio? And you can do that. You know, we have our artistic license at this point. You know, we're free human beings, and if you don't exercise your freedom, then you're really limiting yourself and the world and creativity. And so we have to just be open vessels and let the creativity flow through us. And it's easy for our egos to get in the way and try to say, you know, like, well, what would people think, or I'm not good enough, you know, or whatever, and I can't do that. I don't know how to do it. No, you just do it. And then
There you go. Just do it. You know,
yeah,
and I see that question from many artists who call themselves artists. Well, I don't know how to start an abstract painting. Oh, just do it. Just start. Just paint. Or they get in a mental, what do I want to say? Mental block.
yeah,
Not a
mental
mental block.
block. You got to let it go. You got to let
They
it
get
go.
blocked. And, you know, the way to unblock yourself is just go start doing it. And it'll release that block.
Absolutely. And, you know, and Betsy and I are both proponents of The Artist's Way. I don't know if you know it, but it was a Julia Cameron book that was written back in the early 90s. And, you know, since the first time I read it, and I've actually done classes and courses with it and stuff, you know, I do the morning pages every day. And I
Good for you.
every day since 1991 or 2, whenever it first came out.
Man,
And it
that's
helps
where,
me.
that's where your own writing on your website, the messages. And by the way, you know, you wrote from 2000, I think from 2001 to 2019, and then it abruptly stopped. Why? Or is that too personal?
No, I don't think it is necessarily. I think that they became more seasonal, and then became like one a year, and then, like, right now, I mean, at some point I'd like to write a message. I've had, you know, people ask me, like, you know, where are they? Where are you? But, you know, I think that posting a lot of shorter daily emotional things or historic things on Instagram, you know, sort of took the place of that kind of writing the message once a quarter. But and other projects, you know, have as well.
Sure,
I'd like to be able to just get back to that, but I think that, you know, there's cycles, and right now it's like, do people even go to? I don't know if people even go to websites anymore. I don't know if they do. I mean, I don't know if that's a place where people are going spending time or not.
And that's a good question. Do people actually go to websites? But they're not going to go to a website unless they know it exists and they have some interest in your work to begin with, and then they'll go. But I would really like to encourage you to get back to that writing, because I think you have a good you're a good storyteller.
Thanks, Jerry.
And it comes across in that writing that you share. I assume that you're keeping this journal that you keep has to inform your writing at some point, or certainly can inform your writing at some point.
Oh, completely. The journal. I mean, when I was young, I started keeping a journal after reading Delacroix's journals when I was 18 or 17 or 18 or something. And um, initially I wrote a journal that was like, this is the public record. This is, this is my life, And I did that for many years until I read The Artist's Way in 19, I think it was 92, when I started keeping a journal, kept my journal. I also have a dream journal, but then I started writing the artist pages, morning pages. And then slowly those became the thing. And then now I just keep a journal filled with morning pages because that's real. I'm not trying to put a face to it anymore. It's like just really getting in touch with what I'm feeling and then that's where ideas will flow to you. You'll start writing, and then suddenly you'll remember the dream that you had last night, or you'll remember the thing that happened yesterday that influenced the dream. And you're just in your life in a continuum way, past, present, future. That you're not if you're just like,
Well, you're to be commended for continuing to keep a journal. I've tried many times, but I can't get in the habit. So
yeah, it is
And
habit.
yeah,
Everything is habit. It is. Everything is habit.
yeah.
So I think yeah. So yeah, you just want to try to structure your life around having things so that they add up to the creativity. So you want to keep that dream journal there beside the bed, and you want to keep the morning page book there so you can write in it and you'll remember. And it's just like diet or any of the 10 do's, which are something you might have seen on the message as well. It's just like you want to be physical, and you want to drink plenty of water, and all the things you need to do to just sort of stay healthy so that you can be a clean and clear conduit for the creativity to come through you, and you don't block it with
Yeah.
anything.
Well, Bo, we've been on here quite a while, and this has been great. Very, very interesting. I love talking with you, and I thank you for being my guest. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think we'll close with just, my mantra, which is the purpose of art is to wake us up. And so that's for us personally, individually, to be woken up, and culturally in the larger society. So as artists, your little job is to wake us up. And so with that, that can take many different forms. So it's not about any particular style or medium or anything. Like whatever is true to your temperament, whatever is true to your experience, be true to yourself and make that work, because it's going to be different for every single person, and that's the wonder of it. So just believe in that little inkling you have to make something, whatever that is. Trust that and let it extrapolate and like fractals grow and become a whole world that you live in and experience, because we create the reality, and it's when you create your own reality that where you are allowing other people to see what it means to be alive. So we get to do that as artists. We've got our artistic license, and now's the time. And so as far as I know, we only have one life, but who knows? But we might all be here. But everywhere, everybody might always be everywhere. I don't know. But,
Exactly.
Make the work, because trust that little inkling and trust yourself. You got to trust yourself, and don't listen to too many other voices. I mean, it's too easy to be distracted. And in the end, that's the joy of getting to be. We have this body. It's the joy of getting to have that body. So it's a facilitator for the gods to make stuff. And so let's just be the hands of the gods.
Great advice, and that's a great way to close. So I want to thank you so much for your time this morning, and let's stay in touch, and I look forward to more of your work and more of your art.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks to everyone for being here. Bye.
Well, thank you for watching and listening to The Artist's Voice. Like I said at the beginning, you may find a recording or an audio recording of the show shortly after the conclusion here, after I conclude and close the the broadcast. You will be able to find the show, the audio portion, on Apple Podcasts or on the show's website, which is www.theartistvoice.info. A video recording will be available here on Facebook and also on YouTube. So with that, this is Jerry Hardesty signing off.